This bird was going to drastically upend the life of one guy. The tiny bird was found in the most unlikely of settings, and things really got out of control when the man who found it took it to his local veterinarian. The veterinarian was shocked to learn what it was. Welcome to USA Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. Now let's go to the story. The sound led him to a Specialist continued by elucidating the child's desertion. Because of the harm to the fledgling bird and the animal's faith in humans, she thought the eagle reasoned that a human would be a better caregiver for her kid than she was. These birds were bright, compassionate, and gorgeous, and the mother bird's plan seemed to have come together flawlessly. Her youngster was feeling much better than when they'd first been wrapped. Martin gained a whole new respect for the natural world and this particular type of bird. The father swooped in a minute afterward. The three took a step back and marveled at the passionate sight that was playing out in front of them. The newborn bird was poked by both parents, who then picked it up off the ground and carried it to a neighboring tree. A sensation of warmth welled up inside Martin. This trip was incredible. Thank you. Shark conservationist, photographer, and filmmaker Joel Najafov was astonished to discover a 15-foot shark with a massive circular scar from a bite mark during a great white shark expedition in Mexico. The shark's scar was unlike anything he had ever seen. Welcome to USA Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. Now let's go to the story. As a guest aboard the Pacific Fleet boat in August 2019, Najafov had the chance to take part in a 5-day great white shark adventure to Isla Guadalupe, Mexico. Located 130 nautical miles, 150 miles west of the California Peninsula in Mexico, Guadalupe Island is well known for its scuba diving and opportunities to see great white sharks. I had the good fortune to meet and film Seabatch on the second day of the trip, Najafov said to Petapixel. The day before we left the island, I spotted the shark from the boat. She seemed to be saying farewell as she swam by our boat. Once the scar was identified, Najafov used his GoPro Hero 7 to dip beneath a cage to take a closer picture of the mark. The team got into a heated debate over the shark's scar as it passed. The large bite mark startled the filmmaker much. Though he was aware that the bite was from a shark, he was nevertheless shocked by how large it was. I guess that it was an act of aggression since mating usually leaves scars in the gill areas, he says. I knew that I had filmed very rare footage and it could go viral on social media. After using many cameras, the shark photographer misplaced the memory card with the pictures of the bite marks. The card was eventually located by him on July 17, 2021. He asked his fans what they thought by posting it on Discover Sharks and Instagram. Was it mating aggressiveness that created the unique wound, or was there another reason? He called the shark in the picture Survivor, and it went viral, becoming his most liked post on Instagram. He forwarded this picture to the media distribution business, but they expressed no interest in sharing this specific set. The diver released further images of female sharks with bite marks from mating on December 13, 2021. Occasionally, during shark mating season, male sharks biting female sharks in an attempt to hang on to them causes mating scars on the females' bodies, according to Najafov. After the shark mating scars video went viral, he began getting requests from the media seeking further information. As a conservationist, I thought it was a good chance to show the real bite marks, adds Najafov. I made the decision to contact my buddy, scientist Dr. Christian Guthridge, who is the director of the marine organization Saving the Blue and a presenter on Discovery Channel's Shark Week, before I uploaded Seabatch Survivor on my Facebook again, for his viewpoint, and he gave me the same response. After I uploaded the picture, it quickly became quite popular. Michael Domier, a friend of mine and presenter during Shark Week, is the president and executive director of the Marine Conservation Science Institute. He also believed that another shark was attacking. Given that the scar on the shark's underbelly displays the round form of its jaw, Najafov thinks it to be a bite mark. The round form ruled out the possibility that it was captured by a boat's propeller or by rocks. Although they regularly shift locations, sharks are not inherently territorial. There is proof that great white sharks establish dominance hierarchies in the vicinity of feeding grounds, with the bigger sharks often obtaining the greatest locations for hunting. Given their hard lifestyle, sharks' displays of hostility are typical for the species. During the breeding season, they frequently engage in combat for food and to defend themselves against larger species. The shark enthusiast disputes a popular notion on social media that suggests the scar would have survived from the shark's juvenile years, citing the animal's rapid wound repair. It is well known that sharks recover their wounds very rapidly. I've seen pictures taken by other photographers of injured sharks both before and after they were hurt. The structure of the orca's jaws and teeth is distinct. Therefore, another suggestion from the comments is that the scar is from a killer whale bite mark, according to Najafov. This shark's scar, which I believe to be around a year old, was caused by a bite from another great white shark. It's difficult to estimate the shark's potential size. We will attempt to create a three-dimensional, 3D model of the big deep blue shark, a female great white shark that is thought to be over 50 years old and projected to be 20 feet long, and observe the size of the bite she might make on a shark this big. Undoubtedly, there could exist white sharks bigger than the deep blue that have avoided encountering people. As many people are now publicizing the megalodon, literally big tooth idea, I do not believe in it. Regretfully, we will never be certain of Seabatch's fate. The bite was enormous, that much is certain. Male great white sharks may reach lengths of up to 13 feet, 4 meters, while female sharks can reach lengths of up to 16 feet, 4.9 meters. Growing up, Najafov lived in Azerbaijan, which is situated on the border between Western Asia and Eastern Europe. His love of the water and sharks has always driven him to resign from his position with the government, where he had worked for numerous years. Soon after, he began to travel, and 6 years ago he made the decision to spend the rest of his life to documenting and taking pictures of sharks in their natural environments. Even though he now frequently resides in the US, his hometown is still in Azerbaijan. His objective is to raise public awareness of sharks and the value of their preservation. Najafov is an environmentalist. Thus, it is hard for him to understand that hundreds of sharks are slaughtered every minute, only so that their fins may be used to make shark fin soup. He is making a determined effort to spread awareness of the issue through his films and photos, because he firmly feels that it is important to bring attention to the predicament of sharks. Najafov emphasizes that sharks are not the vicious animals that consume people that are frequently shown in films. Although the chance of being attacked by a shark is very small, it might change according on the species that one is swimming with. In contrast to always staring through the camera viewfinder, he counsels divers to always keep in mind that they are in the company of wild creatures. Take a minute to look about, watch the sharks in their natural habitat, and shoot excellent pictures and movies. When Najafov dives on Isla Guadalupe, Mexico, he never goes without a shark cage. He freedives most other places, staying 2 to 5 meters, 7 to 16 feet below the surface. Najafov, an experienced shark diver who has previously taken pictures of orcas, says, "It is important to always heed the advice of your shark guides, marlins, whales, and other fish. Always treat the water with care, keeping in mind that it is their home. Given that between 70 and 250 million sharks are sadly lost to extinction each year, effort must be taken to safeguard them." The man continued to hear odd sounds beneath the driveway, see what he discovered within. Feeling that his day could not get much worse, he bent down in the driveway and looked beneath his car to assess the damage he had just caused. However, he was going to examine the concrete pavers more closely when he heard a horrible noise that caused his heart to stop. What had he discovered? You never know what you're getting into when you purchase a new home. However, Simon Marks, 37, was unable to resist when he saw a property in Luton, England at an extremely low cost. The move has already begun, and the documentation has been swiftly signed. He never asked why its owner wanted to get rid of it so quickly. Simon joyfully opened his things a few months later. He could not wait to spend his first evening in his new house. He came into bed fatigued after a long weekend of moving his possessions back and forth. He slyly set his alarm for 8 a.m., measuring the distance of his new, considerably shorter trip to the office. However, he heard an odd sound as he laid there in the dark. He listened closely, trying not to breathe, and then heard it again. It originated outside. The sound was muffled and dull, like gravel grinding across metal. He stood up in curiosity and peered out the window to look down at the garden. But nothing moved and everything went back to being silent. He shrugged his shoulders and climbed back into bed, little realizing that beneath his new house, something was moving. When Simon threw his black Vauxhall Zafira in reverse the following morning, the vehicle lurched forward rather than backing out of his driveway. He tried again, cursing. Nevertheless, it appeared that the wheel was stuck on something. With a sigh of relief, he revved the engine until the automobile bounced backward. His stomach fell, though, when he got out to saw what had been lodged beneath the front wheel. Simon noticed that there were cracks in the driveway's pavers as he bent over to get a closer look. The driveway then started to give way directly in front of his eyes. With a painful crunch, the pavers shattered, and he scrambled back as the concrete crumbled and dropped into the ground. But when the dust settled, something very unsettling was exposed by the split in the earth. Simon now understood that the old couple who had lived there before had built his house in the 1970s. Clearly, this had not been included in the home blueprints. He rolled onto his tummy and crawled forward, only lifting his weight when he was certain it was safe to do so. He went to get a shovel and started digging after noticing a shimmer in the ground. With ease, the earth gave way, and he quickly noticed a metal fragment protruding from the ground. With his hands, he exposed it until he could grasp it firmly. He then used great force, but the corroded chunk of metal remained in place. Simon made the decision to start digging around the enigmatic item in an attempt to remove it from the dirt, no matter how hard he pulled. He discovered that the piece of metal was linked to something as he started to expose more and more of it. Simon's thoughts raced with images of his car, or worse, his entire house being swallowed by a massive sinkhole, when he had first noticed the black hole opening up. However, upon closer inspection, he realized he was dealing with something considerably more evil when he noticed the glitter of an artificial item beneath. He took out his phone and made a backup call. Gerald, Simon's father, hurried to the site, and the two set to work without any specialist tools or equipment. With extreme caution, they started to chip away at the broken concrete surrounding the metal fragment, exposing a rectangular hole in the earth. There was a rusted ladder that descended into the shadows. They were starting to become nervous now. Why had the driveway been covered up to reveal the concealed passageway? To what end did it lead? To find out, there was only one option. Simon had studied the ancient house well before he bought it. Ordnance studies he knew all too well would not reveal anything about the enigmatic tunnel beneath his driveway. The report said that before the house was constructed, the area was only vacant property. As they started to dig, he felt a chill run down his spine. They removed the compacted mud in buckets after excavating shovel after shovel full of it. Within an hour, the mound of dirt next to them had grown to a height of about 5 feet, which allowed the two of them to down the ladder and begin their investigation. What they discovered would help explain the strange history of the home. Simon experienced an odd sensation as he downed the ladder halfway. He had no desire to continue. How could it not be safe? In order to get a selfie stick, he dashed back to the home. He lowered his phone into the hole, making sure it was securely fastened. He could see that 2 rooms were concealed by the underground corridor on the phone screen. Gerald assumed he instantly understood what they were looking at, but they needed to be certain. Although the site had been utilized for something else long before the mansion was erected there, Simon had paid almost $500,000 for the property in question. The previous owner of the house was an old man, and he had sold it to Simon without disclosing to him what was underground. The previous night, he had heard the noises of the ground finally breaking way beneath the driveway and collapsing into the hidden chamber. Simon and his father ceased their excavation and began independent research. Things rapidly became clear as they looked up the plot number. This piece of property had been vacant before the previous owners of the home, but Gerald immediately brought up the fact that it was strategically located in the town. However, the house's construction phase was much more significant. "My dad saw it and instantly said, 'It's an air raid shelter,'" Simon said. "We Googled it and found there are quite a few in this area." Simon discovered via his investigation that the shelter was constructed during the Second World War. It must have been known to the previous owner, who filled it in when he built the home and added a garden. A man by the name of Sir John Anderson was tasked with preparing the country for war in 1938, Simon informed reporters during World War II. It was his responsibility to devise a plan to shield the people of Britain from the bombs and the attack that he knew was imminent. Thus, he came up with a brilliant scheme to protect civilians. Simple, low-cost subterranean shelters that could be quickly installed in people's backyards were designed and constructed with assistance from Sir John Anderson and his engineering team. Because of their near proximity, British residents might easily seek refuge at any time. Instead of using concrete for the walls of these structures, lightweight, flexible metal was used. There were more than 2 million of these bomb shelters dispersed across the nation. However, Simon's discovery was not one of these. Gerald could tell from the chamber Simon had discovered that it was not an Anderson-designed bomb shelter, and that it had, in fact, been constructed sometime about 1938. Locals were alarmed to see that their little city was suddenly a target shortly after a bomb detonated in the vicinity of Luton. They needed to figure out a more secure method. The people in the town banded together and soon came up with a plan to build a community shelter that would be more resilient against airstrikes. Gerald could tell that this was undoubtedly not an Anderson-style shelter that they had discovered. It was made of concrete and bricks, and it contained at least 2 rooms. Simon and Gerald found several strange objects as they explored the shelter further. Simon and Gerald discovered a newspaper clipping in one of the rooms. The Herald newspaper was published during World War II. Among its headlines was, "Luton Airport, Is This the End?" And other pieces described the day-to-day activities of the nation devastated by the conflict. An uncommon window into British life during the war was provided by this relic. It wasn't the only artifact they discovered either. Additionally, Simon and Gerald discovered proof that the bomb shelter had previously been supplied with food and drink to keep the occupants alive. Those locked up in the subterranean bunkers would, after all, be confined there for days on end. Simon subsequently said to reporters, "It's incredible to think it's all been made by hand." The subterranean shelter's concrete walls were fortified with brick and mortar, forming an additional barrier that shielded it from aerial attacks. However, Simon and Gerald's job was far from ended once they had made the enormous find. "We've had to dig. There are just 5 feet left to go till it's completed, as we are already 5 feet down. There's so much trash to get rid of, I guess we're going to have to bring in a skip," Simon said. The two then came upon something else. A wall had been sealed with bricks. "We don't know, but I'm 90% positive we won't locate any more rooms. When the home was erected, they could have bricked up a wall to create room for the foundations," Simon told reporters. "If that's the case, we'll just have to leave it," he stated. But the finding didn't take long to become widely known. News reporters and neighbors started to pour into Simon and his father's front driveway as they dug farther, eager to see the incredible and momentous find. However, Simon found the attention he was getting to be of little concern. His worries were elsewhere. For fame, he did not dig up his driveway for hours on end. Though not for fame, Simon believed that sharing his discoveries with the world was crucial. Owes the rich history of the nation something. He wanted for this historical moment to live on. He desired that the air raid shelter be kept intact for next generations. When the shelter is fully emptied, what does he intend to do? Simon intends to maintain and repair the shelter with his father. They anticipate it being recognized as a significant historical landmark. They think that even if the conflict is long gone, that era of history shouldn't be ignored or forgotten. It is their goal that when future generations visit the shelter, they will be able to see a significant portion of history. This youngster was adopted by him 27 years ago. Years later, this is how he paid them back. John Martin, a resolute police officer, takes an unexpected turn of events that leads him to adopt a child called Samuel when he finds a little abandoned black boy in a deserted garage. The youngster is raised by John and absorbs the moral principles and compassion that his adoptive father instilled in him. A crucial turning point occurs 27 years later when Samuel, a prominent lawyer now, discovers a long-standing plot that puts John's life in jeopardy. John Martin was an exemplary man of integrity and respect in the sleepy little Midwesterner town of Linton. The people in the town looked up to John because he was a seasoned police officer with an imposing figure, salt and pepper hair, and a gaze that was both harsh and warm. He was a constant in their life, a dependable person they could trust and a source of security. John was sent one day to look into a tip of strange behavior at a remote garage outside of town. The aged, weathered trees and overgrown plants cast shadows over its crumbling building, adding to the ominous ambiance. Still, John entered with a sense of responsibility that overcame any hint of fear, and flashlight in hand. From a corner in the dust and cobweb-filled room, he saw two brilliant eyes sparkling with anxiety and fright. The boy's skinny, undernourished frame stood in sharp contrast to his large, terrified eyes. He was just 7 years old. The youngster appeared to be of African-American heritage, with rich, dark complexion that blended nicely with the garage's low illumination. His deafening silence made his precarious condition even more vulnerable. John's fatherly instincts were triggered by seeing the scared youngster all alone and helpless. He was kneeling next to the youngster, trying to calm his anxiety with a nice smile and kind words. Even though Samuel was mute or refused to speak, his eyes conveyed a tale of abuse. Days spent longing for compassion and nights spent in the cold and without food. John was unable to ignore the narrative. John made the decision to temporarily house Samuel because he didn't want to leave him at the mercy of the system. After his own father, who had instilled in him the values of justice and humanity that continue to uphold him to this day, he called the kid Samuel. He believed that Samuel has the same fighting spirit as his father, but the village, for all its warmth and charm, was not without its constraints. It was impossible to find Samuel a good family. Because of Samuel's color, John had to deal with the harsh realities of societal discrimination in this mostly white community. John was faced with a decision that may change his life during these difficult times. His heart began to change when he saw Samuel, hesitant but hopeful, and how he would observe John while making a quiet appeal with his eyes. Now that he was providing this new life not just a home, but a family, John, the guardian of the entire town, was thinking of expanding his guardianship. It was a choice driven by empathy and the bravery of an officer who saw into a child's deep, innocent eyes rather than just the color of their skin. Following several weeks of introspection, juggling the administrative obstacles of adoption and piles of documentation, John Martin took a choice that fundamentally changed his life. Samuel was formally adopted by him. The timid young kid from the garage, Samuel, grew up to be Samuel Martin, the son of a well-liked policeman in Linton in the middle of the Midwest. Samuel's impression of John changed as time went on. He was more than simply the policeman who pulled him out of the pitch-black garage. He was a father who gave a comforting hug after every misstep, a mentor who shared knowledge, and a guide who led him along the winding roads of life. Similarly, John was saved from the phantom of a life without the pleasures of parenthood by the same person who had saved Samuel from the darkness of loneliness. John took great care to impart in Samuel the principles that characterized him as an officer and a man: the importance of equality, the pursuit of truth, and kindness. Frequently, the teachings happened during supper, on their fishing excursions, or on calm nights on the veranda. And Samuel, a keen student with keen eyes and an even sharper intellect, absorbed the lessons like though they were made of sponges. John was simultaneously reminded of the beauty and wonder found in life's small joys, such as the sight of a rainbow after a shower, the feel of fresh grass beneath bare feet, the excitement of catching a fish, and the warmth of shared laughter. By Samuel, with his youthful innocence and boundless curiosity, John experienced a deep feeling of pleasure from Samuel's joy in these moments, which made the challenges of being a single parent worthwhile. Even if their lives appeared perfect, difficulties were unavoidable. It was not easy for John, a single father, to balance the demands of his law enforcement job with the obligations of raising a kid. Samuel found it difficult to comprehend why John was always unable to attend his school functions, or why he had to leave in the middle of their dinners. Their peaceful household started to seem uneasy due to John's absence, anxiety, and unpredictable career. The hard realities of John's job life began to affect their household peace, which tested the link between John and Samuel. Every time he put on his uniform, Samuel battled his dread of losing his father, and John battled his guilt at not being able to protect his son from the risks associated with his line of work. Nevertheless, they discovered resiliency in the midst of this chaos. which is evidence of the love that began in the abandoned garage and grew into a family ties that could withstand the most trying circumstances. Samuel found himself on the verge of self-discovery as he navigated the turbulent journey of puberty, attempting to make sense of his identity as a black adolescent in a world that was predominantly white. He was now Samuel Martin, son of Officer John Martin, a black youngster attempting to make his way in the tiny town of Linton. He was no longer the undernourished little boy saved from the garage. Samuel's sense of disillusionment was accompanied by a revolt. His formerly courteous and obedient manner began to exhibit rebellious tendencies. His standing in the world and the implicit racial biases that frequently tainted his encounters with others in town started to bother him. Samuel's connection with John deteriorated as he struggled to deal with being the only black child in a predominantly white household and town. Linton, a peaceful community, started to exhibit indicators of racial conflict. Samuel's skin tone was unfairly brought attention to by whispers in school hallways, sideways glances at the grocery store, and the subtle yet noticeable disparities in treatment during neighborhood gatherings. John, whose heart was heavy with anguish he recognized but could not fully relate with, watched as his son navigated these murky waters. But a potentially fatal event at John's place of employment marked a sea change in their tense relationship. John was gravely hurt as a result of an improperly handled case. Samuel would frequently find himself in hospital waiting rooms during these difficult moments, pacing tensely and experiencing a panic he had never experienced before. Samuel and John grew closer as a result of the incident because their mutual concern overshadowed their differences. These chilly, impersonal hospital hallways were where Samuel's future was shaped. His father's precarious status was caused by systemic inadequacies, which gave him the drive to study law, combat injustice, and change the world. On the other hand, John discovered that his kid was subjected to racial injustices on a regular basis. He became aware of the disparities in their difficulties while he lay on the hospital bed, battered and bandaged. He struggled with the realization that, in addition to his battles with outside opponents, Samuel was engaged in an internal conflict as he attempted to identify himself in a society that appeared determined to categorize him according to the color of his skin. The event acted as a trigger for a closer bond between father and son, as well as for Samuel's future goals. It was a moving lesson in resiliency, harmony in the face of conflict, and the unbreakable strength of their relationship. It was the start of a journey for both Samuel and John, as Samuel sought justice in the courts while John tried to relate to his son and support him in his struggle against racial discrimination. Years passed like passing shadows, and the undernourished youngster who had been discovered in an abandoned garage grew up to become a prosperous lawyer who personified justice and resiliency. Like his father John, Samuel Martin had risen through the ranks and established himself as a well-liked figure in the town of Linton. His voyage was not without difficulties, though. One day, the quiet town's tranquility was disturbed by a corruption scandal. It implicated some of Linton's most powerful people, names that were revered and even feared. Samuel was shocked to see his father John Martin mentioned, as it was a name he was quite familiar with. The weight of the charges against his father seemed to increase with every document he studied and testimonial he perused. He was plagued by a persistent sensation as he delved further into the details of the case, uncovering a terrifying scheme. Samuel was completely shaken by the devious plan, which was a painstakingly constructed strategy to accuse John of a crime he had not committed. The realization set up a war inside him. His professional obligations, the values he had followed throughout his career, and the oath he had made to defend justice and the truth were on one side. He had a particular loyalty to his father, the person who had given him more than all. John's trust in his black son's capacity to overcome prejudice and make a difference was a return of the integrity and resiliency lessons he had taught Samuel. Their path, entwined with mutual lessons learned, struggles faced, and victories achieved, had resulted in a courtroom triumph that was equally Samuel's and John's. With the shadow of racial tensions and corruption behind them, they discovered that their relationships were stronger, their understanding was deeper, and their confidence in one another was unwavering as they left the courthouse. The well-respected officer and the garage kid had triumphed, and their narrative served as a monument to the strength of integrity, love, and trust. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. If you enjoyed the tale, the next video that plays on your screen will probably move you too.